What I'm going to be sharing today is something that I have not shared publicly. There's much public content as I put out there. This product launch strategy is one that is working right now, and also is one that we're seeing insane results for. And why are we talking about product launch strategy? Because I talk to a lot of sellers and all of them are asking about it. I actually ran a poll on LinkedIn. I have about 30,000 followers, and like 77% of them were like, we want to know about product launch strategy. And also, if you go into any single group, you can find a ton of information on YouTube. But the question is that really what's happening now? Those videos are a year old. Amazon advertising moves so fast. So, what's working right now? That's what we're going to be covering. And this is the exact strategy we're using. Again, this is not something I've shared publicly. I've shared it with a couple selective friends. So, not only are we getting good results for this, we're seeing some insane results for clients. Again, even up into this is a message we got just this past January. So, it's working right now. But also, I've been sharing this in some private groups that I'm in, and other sellers are getting results as well. So, it works. The thing that makes this strategy work so much is I love to get in the nitty-gritty. I love to read Amazon's white papers. And the more you read about how their search algorithm is really trying to figure out which products to rank in search, when I dive into the data and I get really nitty-gritty with it, I come back out and realize it's all about relevancy and conversions. But the problem with product launches is that you don't really know where your conversions are going to happen, and you don't really know where your specific shoppers are going to buy. That's what this strategy is designed to help you hone in on and then maximize. So this is what we're going to be covering. We're going to be talking about keyword research, and we're going to be talking about campaign setup. Just those two things alone are going to get you set off on the right foot. But there's always a question once you go through and launch those campaigns, how do I optimize them? What should I be doing in the first days and weeks of launch? And then the other question is like, when does that launch phase end? What do we do next? What additional campaigns? So I wanted to give you A to Z launch to maximizing and launching additional campaigns and really scaling your ads. So we're going to cover it all. Plus, not included in this slide, I actually even have a bonus section for you as well. All right, so stage one, let's talk keyword research. This is what we're going to go over in the keyword research phase. We're going to talk about identifying what we call an anchor keyword. More on that in a second. You're going to reverse ASIN search competitors. It's a very common tactic. And then we're going to go about how do you choose ranking keywords. And one of the most common questions is like, which keywords do I choose? How many of them do I choose? I got you. All right. So the first thing you want to do is identify your anchor keyword. Why is this really important? Well, again, when you go through and read Amazon's white papers and how their search algorithm works, they're really focused in on relevancy, and you absolutely must make sure that you get this right. And this all starts with an anchor keyword. This is a pre-step before the typical Amazon keyword research that everyone talks about, knows and loves, reverse ASIN searching competitors. You want to do this first because this is going to make sure you find the right competitors. If you don't do this, you're probably not going to end up with the best keyword list. So what the anchor keyword, what we're looking to do is really there's this intersection between volume and relevancy on Amazon. So really the more specific you get to what your product is, so this is often referred to as like long tail searches, oftentimes there's less sellers who are actually going through and typing in all of those keywords in search. So the more specific the keyword is, the more likely the shopper is searching for your exact products. So it's not that we don't want to go after long tail keywords, but we also want to make sure that we're going after volume so we can move as much product as possible. So our goal in this pre-step is to find the intersection for your specific product between volume and relevancy. And here's how you do it. Because I don't know about you, I like to see examples, so I got a lot of screenshots to show exactly what does relevancy look like on a search page. But first, this is how you start. Your anchor keyword, again, is going to be the highest search volume, most relevant keyword for you. So the first step you're going to do is you're going to enter your seed keyword into a keyword research tool. This is Junglr. Of course, there's many options out there. Junglr is a great option. Then you're going to do is you're going to sort this by search volume. And then number three, you're going to work your way down the list to manually evaluate for relevancy. Again, I got screenshots. I'm going to show you exactly what that looks like. But essentially, we're working our way down the list and say, okay, where does that intersection really start to happen? Where do we have good search volume, but it's also super specific to my product? How do you know a keyword is super specific to your product? Well, that's easy. What you do is you look at the search pages. So here's a really great example. we're going to assume that this baby blanket is our product. So what you might do is you might look at that list and you say, okay, so the keyword blanket, right? This is a blanket that has a crap ton of search volume. But if you look at the search page here for blanket, well, these are all adult blankets. Our product does not fit on this search page. What you want to ask is how many very like products to mine fit on this search page. So the other keyword might be baby blanket. Now, this is a baby blanket. And yes, I just snagged one of the products that was here. So it's still ranking on baby blanket. So it's not that we can't rank. But if you look at the variations, there's a whole bunch of custom blankets here. You have plush blankets, and then you also have blankets that are like theirs. The search is quite varied. Or you might say, like, okay, this is a swaddle blanket. So swaddles for newborn. But if you look at this, there's these Velcro options. And so this isn't like specific to our product. Again, this product is ranking. So it's not that we can't go after these keywords eventually, but these are not our ranking keywords. So what might a high relevancy keyword look like? Well, here you can see muslin swaddle blankets. Now in this specific space, you see that muslin swaddle blankets has a 54,000 search volume. So still a very high search volume keyword. Depending on what your space looks like, you might have a lot of search volume or you might only have a little bit of search volume. So you really want to gauge where that relevancy and that search volume connect. Ideally, you're going to be left with at least some keywords that are in the couple thousand to ideally 5 or 10,000 search range. Now, again, it depends on your category. So actually just being able to do this is not a bad step if you're going through and you're even doing product research, because what you want to find is what is the volume for exact products like mine. And then this is our anchor keyword, and this is where we start. So that was step one. So what's step two? Well, step two, we're going to go through and we're going to verse ASIN search our competitors. So again, you're going to search your anchor keyword on Amazon. You're going to see what comes up. So plugin tools here are great. Again, Jungle Scout here, there's Helium 10, there's other keyword tools out there. So what you're going to do is you're going to choose 10 like ranking products with good sales volume that are ranking on your anchor keyword. This is how we know that we are finding products that are like ours, that are ranked the highest on the keywords that matter most to us. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take 10 of these competitors and you're going to put them into a reverse ASIN search tool. The other thing to note here is very similar to how there's that intersection between a lot of relevancy and then the volume tends to go down. It's very similar. So when you search your anchor keyword, you might also be looking for products that are very similar to yours. So example would be if you had like a pack size and you wanted to get more specific. So you sold a 2-pack and there's only so many sellers that sold 2-packs and you wanted to get specific. You also want to look at monthly units sold. Sometimes if you get really specific to your product, there's less monthly units. So kind of, again, use best judgment there on what competitors you're picking. But once you have that, then you should be able to download your keyword tool and then you're going to pop it open. Now, Jungle Scout here has this nice organic ranking ASINs count, which is really helpful. You can calculate this yourself, or sometimes other tools, they will call it something different, but it's essentially how many of my top 10 competitors are ranking on these keywords. And again, we're choosing products that are on our anchor keyword that are specific to us, that have good volume. So we know that this list is going to be sound. And here, this is actually almost like a relevancy formula. So what you would do is you would uncheck anyone that is not ranking at all. And then you would just sort this list highest to lowest to say what is the most relevant. And then you'll see a list like this. Again, this is sorted by relevancy. So you'll see things like muslin blanket, baby muslin swaddle, all of that. And what you're going to do is you're going to choose 10 of these keywords that are highly relevant. And you want to have at least a couple thousand search volume. You can go higher than that, obviously, but you don't want to go really low. Again, what you have to choose from is going to be very dependent on the search volume from your category. So in this one, there's a lot of search volume. You have a lot of things to choose from. The other thing is you still want to vet these keywords. You're only picking 10, so you have time. It's a manual process. I have not found a good substitute for going through this manually. Sorry, if you want the results, you got to put in the effort. And so here you can see we have this one keyword swap. It might be relevant, but when we pop it open, yes, there's some blankets here, but it's also like these Velcro ones, where if we look at baby muslin swaddle, this search page is actually showing a lot of products like ours. So sometimes you think you know what your shoppers are looking for or what types of searches they're typing in to find your products. but we don't always know because swaddles, you might think, well, baby muslin swaddle, but it turns out that this one actually is a pretty good keyword for us. So again, you want to make sure that you're vetting these keywords. Now, 10, what we found is a good sweet spot. We used to do more than that. We used to do 20. You could go up to 15, maybe 20. You got to have the budget to do that. You're going to see why when I get into the optimization section and the changes you should be making. But I wouldn't go much lower than that because really what we're going to be doing is we're going to be letting the shoppers vet these keywords for us using data. I'm going to show you how to do that. But this is where we start. Okay, so we did our keyword research. That's great. You put in the effort, and now we got to figure out what campaigns we're setting up. So we're going to go over campaign naming. We're going to go over how to handle product variations. I get a lot of questions like that. So I want to make sure I get clarity there, and then we're going to go through structuring the campaigns, and I got a lot of screenshots as well. So I'll show you exactly how to set these up. So we're going to be launching single keyword campaigns for all of these keywords. So if you pick 10 keywords, you're going to have 10 campaigns in total. All right, the anatomy of a good campaign name. A solid campaign naming structure is going to provide quick and clear understanding of your campaign strategy goals. You should be able to read a campaign name and immediately understand what products are being advertised, what type of ad it is, and the intent behind the advertising. I've seen some doozies of a campaign name in my day. I want to spare you the trouble. So this is what we found is the anatomy of a good campaign name. So you want to have some sort of product identifier, basically what products are we advertising, what type and what match type. We're going to be going, what strategy are we running? Where did we find these keywords? What's the bidding strategy? What's the date that we launched? And who launched this? Which if you have a team, you might say like what team member launched this. That can be helpful as well. So when you be like, hey, what was the intent behind this? You know who to ask. All right, so here's what this looks like. So what products are we advertising? Blanket, and then we might put the ASIN. So we like to have just a normal text identifier because sometimes that's helpful. But we'll put the ASIN or the SKU, just depending on what we're putting in here. What ad type? So this is sponsored product exact match. We use SKC for single keyword campaigns, and then we say rank. This is a rank strategy. For this, we were using helium 10, so H10, and then baby blanket, and then FB for fixed bids. We'll go over that when we do the campaign setup. Date launched is helpful, especially when you're looking at reports, and then we know that our company was the one to launch it. So I can immediately look at this and say, oh, we're advertising this baby blanket. It's a ranking campaign, sponsored product exact match. This is the specific keyword we're going after. I know I'm using fixed bids. This is when I launched it. This is who launched it. All by reading this, nothing else. Trust me, this is insanely helpful when you're trying to dive into reports. All right, so we went over campaign names. How do you handle the product variations? Well, if you have a single ASIN listing, congratulations, just put the single ASIN. You don't have to do any extra work. But if you have a lot of variations, there's really 3 different scenarios. So the one is you don't have any performance data on them. It's a newly launched product. You don't know which is going to perform the best. In that case, we're going to include all of the child ASINs into that campaign. Second is if performance data exists. Now on launches, typically you don't have any performance data, but there might be some scenarios where you had a product that you've had active on Amazon for a while and you want to go through like a launch sequence. In that case, you might have existing data and you could say, advertise just the top performing variation, again, for each of these individual campaigns. However, there is an exception. So if you have a specific keyword, i.e. like blue swaddle blanket, you want to make sure if you have a variation that fits that description, you only advertise the variations that are relevant to that. And that will be if we have data or we have no data. All right, now we're ready to set up our campaign. So you're going to launch a sponsored product. You're going to we're doing single campaign, single ad group. So in this case, I'm just putting the ad group and the campaign name as the same. You're going to choose the products that you're adding, again, based on that variation strategy I talked about. And then you're going to choose manual targeting. You're going to choose keyword targeting. And here you're going to go into keyword targeting. You choose enter list, only check exact because we're only doing exact match. And then what you want to do for your bid, you're going to use your suggested bid plus 20 to 50 cents to be competitive. Now, this is our starting bid. Okay, I'm going to go through some really intense optimizations in a second, but we just want to get a really good competitive start. Our goal here is impressions and visibility. I'm going to go through how to evaluate like the shopper funnel and the data when we get to the optimization section. But again, this is just a good starting point. All right, then what you're going to do is on your campaign bidding strategy, you're going to choose fixed bids. And then we're going to set up the campaign. We've already talked about campaign name. And then when it comes to the daily budget, we will choose somewhere between $10 and $15 to start. I got budget optimizations for you as well. But what you want to make sure is you kind of keep this as a cap as to how much we're spending daily to test. But you do want to make sure that your budget is high enough to get enough daily clicks to really test if this keyword works. So an example here would be if we expect about 15 clicks to test a keyword, that's going to be based on your conversion rates. We'll talk about that in the optimization section. But if this example, we had 75 cents and we multiplied that by 15 clicks, that gives us $1.25. So we know that, okay, if we have a $15 budget, we should at least get enough clicks to be able to validate that. Again, if your cost per click is higher, conversion rate is lower, then you probably would want to set a higher initial budget. All right, so we have our keywords and we launched our campaigns, and oftentimes that's where the product launch strategy starts. But I wanted to do you a solid and show you how to do the initial optimizations to really, this is where the secret sauce comes in. Now, I'm going to say this is not for the faint of heart. This is going to take a lot of effort on your part. You're going to see why when I actually give you the breakdown. But what I'm going to say is that if you want the results, you got to put in the work. So here's the work that you need to put in. Okay, we're going to go over the initial phase. So how you want to do rapid adjustments for visibility. I'm going to talk about evaluating the funnel, how you use the sales funnel to really evaluate if a keyword is working for you or not. And then we're going to talk about switching from adjusting bids to adjusting budgets and how that's going to let you scale up with confidence. All right, here's what you're going to do. Once you launch your campaigns, a lot of people think like, all right, I launched it, I picked a good bid, let me wait a week to go in and optimize. No, we want to move quickly. What we have found is that these days it's a little bit harder to gain initial impressions on our like newly launched campaigns. So what we have to do is we got to put in the effort to make Amazon give us the impressions that we need. So what you're going to do is you're going to check and adjust your bids twice daily. Yes, I did say that. You're going to have 10 launch campaigns and you're going to adjust all of those bids twice daily. And you're going to wait. The goal here is to adjust them if you're not receiving impressions. If you are receiving impressions, as you can see in this screenshot, then we're good to go. We know we're getting impressions, and we'll talk about how you evaluate the impressions you're getting. But if you're not getting impressions like you see here, that's why campaign naming is really important, because if you have a good solid campaign name, you could put the first half of it just to see where you're ranking, and then you could just quickly check to see if there's impressions. Again, because it's a single keyword campaign, whatever's at the campaign level is going to be what's happening at the keyword level. So you can quickly check it inside Ad Console. So if you are not getting impressions, you want to increase your bid by 20 to 50 cents, or if the suggested bid has changed and your bid is now below the suggested bid, you want to increase your bid to the suggested bid. Yes, your bids may get high, but again, our goal is to make sure that the algorithm is going to serve up impressions. So we're basically using aggressive bidding to force Amazon to serve our ads, which is another reason why we're only picking 10 keywords, because we want to make sure that those keywords are super targeted, and we're going to spend in the beginning to make sure we can figure out what works. All right. Once we have that, once we're starting to gain impressions, we're going to evaluate the shopper funnel. So as this works, it all starts with impressions. So we want to get enough impressions that we can start to generate clicks. And from there, we can see if those clicks lead to orders. Remember, I said there's a bonus section, so I'll talk about kind of troubleshooting this towards the end. But really, it all starts with the impressions. You can't start to get clicks and you can't start to get orders if you don't have impressions. And that's why you have those really aggressive adjustments. So what we're going to do is once you get at least one order or two orders, you want to figure out, okay, what is my conversion rate? Again, if you're doing this for an existing product that you just want to go through like a launch sequence with, you should already have a decent idea of what the conversion rates would be. But if in the beginning we have no orders, we have no idea what the conversion rate is. Once we start getting that data, data in the form of orders, then you can calculate your conversion rate. So your conversion rate is going to be your orders divided by your clicks. That's going to be your ad conversion rate. And you can use that conversion rate to calculate how many clicks on average it's going to take you to convert to an order. So an example would be 1 divided by whatever your conversion rate percentage is. So if your conversion rate is 6.7%, then on average, it takes about 15 clicks to generate an order. So we want to get the impressions and then we start getting the clicks. And then our goal is we have 10 lures out there and we're seeing which of these keywords should I double down on? Where am I getting orders? Remember, I talked about relevancy and conversions, and that's what the algorithm cares about. What we're doing is we're throwing out lures and we're saying, all right, which of these ones is the shoppers going to bite on? And then once we know which the shoppers are going to bite on, then we can really start doubling down. Now, for the ones that aren't working, you can start reducing the bids for non-converting keywords. I am not saying for high ACoS keywords. I'm saying for zero order keywords. So there's a lot of time on launch, there is this worry of high ACoS. That may very well happen. That's not our goal right now. Our goal will be profitability in the long run. But right now we need to generate those orders to be able to generate that rank. But if you are getting a lot of impressions and you're seeing enough clicks and those aren't leading to orders, that doesn't mean you need to keep spending on those keywords. Again, we have a lot of lures out there, so we need to also evaluate the ones that don't work, the ones that we're getting a lot of bites, but we don't get the fish. So here, what you can do once you have enough information, you can start to lower your bids, because again, we've probably gotten really aggressive bids because we've been continuously increasing. So what you can do is you can lower your bids to 10 to 20% below the average cost per click. And you can start to evaluate not twice a day, maybe once every other day, once every day if you really want to get on it. And then if you really get a lot of clicks and you're not getting any orders, then what you can do is you can deprioritize these keywords, meaning you could pause. Or another way to do this is what we call a quote, a soft pause, which is setting the bids to 17 cents, or you can set the campaign budget to $1, if that makes sense. It's essentially a way to like pause without pausing. And we use that tactic a lot. All right. Once you are getting the impressions, you have validated where the orders are coming from, then we can stop really being aggressive on the increase with our bids. The aggressive increase of the bidding is really to start generating those impressions. But once you start to get that data from the funnel, meaning the clicks and the orders, then you can really stop the aggressive increases of your bids and you can really hold back and say, okay, I know my ads are being found in search. I know I'm getting that visibility. I don't have to go crazy with how much I'm spending per click. But now what we want to do is we want to gradually increase our budgets. Remember, we put those budget caps? That's basically so we can go aggressive with our bids and know that we're not going to be blowing hundreds or thousands of dollars a day. So that's like our fail safe. But once we have validated, again, which lures are working for us, we're pulling back on the ones that aren't, and then we're scaling the budgets of the campaigns that are working. So here you can see we have a $750 daily budget. Yeah, that's aggressive, but we're getting $7,000 in sales. So we spent $2K to make $7K. That works for us in this account. So you also want to make sure that you're avoiding dramatic increases. So you do want to kind of maintain some cost control here. So we increase, say $5 to $20 increments, or you might even go up to, 5 to 20 is a good barometer. And again, you're checking these to say like, are campaigns running out of budget? Am I okay with how much ACoS I'm getting on these? Do I have anything with better ACoS? And then you're starting to strategically just optimize the budgets more than the bids. Although if you start to see impressions drop off, you might go through and increase bids as well. So it's about tweaking those things. But again, we've already validated what worked, so we can just double down on it using the bids and budgets. All right, so that is a strategy. That's going to get you really aggressive out of the gate ranking. I'm not promising you no ACoS, but I am promising you very rapid data feedback. And you saw how frequently we're adjusting. So we're not tweaking one thing and waiting like a week to see what happens. We're in there every single day, checking up on it, monitoring, tweaking. But once you are done with that sequence, I don't want you to just stick to single keyword exact match campaigns. Those are phenomenal for ranking purposes, but that's not going to give you a well-rounded ad structure. So what I want to do is give you some additional campaigns that you can launch to really start scaling up your ads. And here, what we're doing is we're doubling down on what we already have proven worked in the first stage. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to launch product targeting campaigns. I'm going to talk about what to snag, how to do it. We're going to launch some broad match campaigns, and then we're going to launch low bid auto campaigns. So for here, your product targeting campaigns, this actually has additional impact on ranking. Not many people know this, but product targeting, if done correctly, will actually help you increase your rankings. I actually had someone I shared this strategy with. They've been stuck at number 2 in a really competitive category for a very long time. He went a little bit more aggressive with his bids and also added product targeting into a strategy and shot up to pay like spot 1 in his categories, which he'd been struggling with for a while. So this has been validated and it absolutely does work. So what you're going to do is only for the keywords that you have validated. That's why we used to go through and launch all of this stuff that I'm going to talk about for all of those 10 or 20 keywords that we've chosen. And what we found is because some things worked, some things didn't, we hadn't really validated it first. We ended up having to spend a lot on our launches, and then the results in terms of like what we were doing, it was a little bit hard to identify where the product fit in the market. It was a bit hard. This is like a really strategic scale up strategy. So what you're going to do is only for those keywords that in the single word exact match campaigns, you've proven, again, orders, we're not talking ACoS right here. What you're going to do is you're going to go to the search pages and you're going to snag the top 1 to 5 organically ranked ASINs on those keywords. And then what you're going to do is you're going to put those into an exact match product targeting campaign. Product targeting now has expanded targeting. An exact match, use the exact match. And you're going to only do these ASINs. Now you can group all 5 of these ASINs into a single, I would recommend single campaign, single ad group using a dynamic down only bid strategy, or you can use a fixed bid strategy, either or. All right, so that's the first one. That will help with ranking. That'll help you get additional sales. The other thing that you can do is launch broad match campaigns. Now, again, we're only doing this for the validated keywords. You're taking those original keywords, figuring out which one of those worked, launching these in single keyword broad match campaigns we found work really well. Now, I would use dynamic bids down only for this, and then I would do a lower bid. So our bid right here, you could see I don't know if you can see this, but the lowest end of the suggested bid is like 42 cents. We went with 35 cents. Again, you're going to be optimizing these, but you just want a low starting point because broads will probably spend a lot. So you want to be careful. And then the last thing that we can do is you can launch a low bid auto campaign. Again, I would use dynamic down only for this type of campaign. And this allows us to leverage Amazon's algorithm to just discover additional opportunities here. I would go on the lower end of the suggested bids here because we've already really pushed ourselves into the market and gained a lot of indexing by doing that. Then your auto campaign should also work a lot better. And then this, of course, with the broads and the autos, it allows you to then leverage your search term reports to do additional keyword research and expand your ads even further. All right. So all of that, super solid, but I'm going to give you a bonus section because I am 120% confident that this launch strategy absolutely works. I have seen the results of it, but things don't always go according to plan. Not that the strategy isn't solid, but sometimes the products and what we've chosen isn't exactly on point because these kind of things take practice. So what do you do when things don't go according to plan? Well, you want to do some final troubleshooting. So we're going to address things like low click-through rate. So what happens when you're getting a ton of impressions and nobody's clicking? What happens when you're getting a ton of clicks and nobody's purchasing? And then how do you gauge like some market misalignment and maybe go about picking additional keywords? Okay, so some things that can happen is sometimes you have a lot of impressions. You're like, all right, I'm bidding enough, I'm getting impressions, but I'm not getting a lot of clicks. One clue that you can look for is a click-through rate. So any click-through rate, if you're showing on top of search that's below a 0.5 is going to be low. If you're showing up rest of search or other pages, 0.2 to 0.15 is like really bad. I'm not going to say optimize for click-through rate. I would use click-through rate as a signal to determine if it's that your product isn't as appealing as it should be on those search pages. So what you want to do here is you want to improve the things that the shopper is going to see in the search grid. So these are going to be things like the main image, your title, your price point. Some things that will also influence this is if you don't have any reviews yet, you can expect a lower click-through rate then. But basically you're saying like, hey, when I show up on the search page, and am I appealing to shoppers at all? You can validate that through click rate. And then the other thing you want to do is ensure that the keywords you accurately describe your products. Remember when I talked about like going through, looking at search, how well do I fit within the search page? I would do that again, for the only the specific keywords you're seeing these issues on. The other thing might be low conversion rates. So if your shoppers are clicking, but they're not purchasing, then you need to look further. So they're getting to the listing, but nobody's converting. Here, you want to look at improving your overall listing content. So adding high quality images, better description. Sometimes you forgot that you didn't add an infographic. You want to ensure that your product fulfills the keyword's intent. That's why relevancy is so important here. Pro tip here, if you're seeing specific searches that you're not converting well on, go and search those pages on Amazon. Go and look at the listings for those top products that are ranked and say, like, what do they have that I don't have? There is a tool, PickFu. It's a fantastic tool to do like research. So you can say like, hey, you can add product links into your PickFu polls and say like, hey, when you search this listing or you search this listing, what's one is more appealing and why? So you basically want to discover what are they doing that I'm not doing, so you can copy them and ideally make it better. And then the other thing is sometimes you just need to revisit keywords. So there will be some times where you try all 10 of your keywords and for some reason you're just not getting anything to convert. Again, we're not talking about low ACoS here. We're simply saying, is anybody purchasing at all? It really has to go down to product. I'll be frank with you, advertising is not going to fix a poor product, but you can sometimes, we have done this where back in the day, we had some products where like on there, just very specific keywords for whatever reason, they didn't really convert well. But when we went outside of like those really specific searches, which I mean, I did the keyword research myself. I am confident I picked the right keywords, but they just didn't convert well for the product. So in those cases, sometimes you have to go back to the drawing board and sometimes you can broaden your horizon a little bit. So maybe you go after things baby blanket, or maybe you try like a long tail interesting variation, or in like giftable products, sometimes there's different pages that you can show up on. And sometimes you don't convert well when you're against direct competition, but you do convert a little bit better when you're in a market that nobody looks exactly like you, but it still fulfills the purpose. So sometimes you got to kind of be a little bit ninja with it. And I know that was a lot. So we went through everything today. We went through the keyword research. We went through how to launch the campaigns. We went through, what do we do? Optimization. I can't even remember. There was so much. And then we also went through the additional scaling campaigns and troubleshooting. So with everything I mentioned today, I know it's a lot to hold in your brain, but if you forgot everything I said, and I could give you one tip and one takeaway, I would say definitely focus on relevancy because it all hinges on the proper targeting. So if you don't take away anything else, any of the optimizations, just remember, start with where does my product fit in the market and do your best to really test those keywords that fit that description.